Chair recognizes Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill addresses an ongoing crisis of road rage in not only Texas, but more specifically, a challenge that we are having in Houston. A number of years ago, a friend of mine asked me to sit down with a gentleman named Paul Castro. Some of y'all have met him. He's come up here to testify. He and his kids were leaving an Astros game. There was a road rage incident of trying to get on the freeway. A gentleman chased him and fired a shot into his car. Paul will tell you how he held the brains of his son David as he drove him to the hospital before he died. David Wilson came and told a similar story about his daughter Louise driving down the freeway, got into a road rage incident with somebody else who fired a shot at her car, and she too died. We are seeing an increase of incidents where back in the day when you got mad at another driver, you might honk the horn, you might shoot them the bird, but today it seems to be acceptable that you fire a gun in that car's direction. And so while all of us would recognize that we would teach our kids not to be put in a bad spot to come in contact with criminal activity or not to be in a place that you shouldn't, we are now seeing any driver on any road on a Texas highway is subject to being a victim of being shot because some other driver got upset and decided that's the way that they wanted to resolve their frustration. And so what this bill does is acknowledge that if you pull out a gun and you discharge at another vehicle, and what this bill does is create kind of a bubble around that vehicle, that if you discharge at that vehicle, hit a human, hit the property, or come close enough that it puts somebody in fear of imminent bodily injury or death, that it is now a first-degree felony. 5 to 99 or life. Currently, it is only a second degree. If you pull out your gun and you drive by a house and you shoot at the house, it's a first degree. And so all we're doing is making this consistent. We're saying that people on the roadways are protected just as much as somebody in a house, and those that get out in those intersections and those road rage incidents and fire. Not pulling out your gun, not self-defense, not firing in the air to scare somebody, but to fire at somebody or property where somebody could be hurt. We are asking to increase that to a first-degree felony on behalf of David Castro and Louise Wilson. Protect all Texans on the roadway.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Hopper, for what purpose?
would the lady yield for a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Lady yield for questions? She does.
I will.
Hey, Representative, thank you. I'm not a lawyer, so maybe you could walk me through a couple things. So currently the statute says that if you threaten someone with imminent bodily injury while brandishing a firearm, that's a second-degree felony?
Correct. If you
Okay.
pull out a gun and you threaten, but you never discharge, that's a second degree.
Okay. And this bill is amending the aggravated assault statute to allow for an offense that was a second-degree felony to be elevated to the first degree.
If two conditions are met.
Okay.
First off, you discharge. Not pull out a gun, you fire. And you not only fire, you fire at a bubble around an area in which a human could be hit.
Okay. And is the only offense category that's higher than a first-degree felony is a capital offense, is that right?
You could have an enhancement for 15 years, or you could have another floor of 25, like continuous sexual abuse of a child. And so, yeah, all we're doing is bumping from a second degree to a first degree. But you're right. There are other what we call floors of 15, 25, and in here we're keeping it at 5. I think that's very consistent. And
Okay, thank you. And
you're welcome.
the last question I have is, so if we pass this bill, would it be possible for someone to get a first-degree felony without ever actually causing physical harm to another human being solely because it involved the firearm and they discharged it?
Discharge at, and so basically we don't give you credit for being a bad shot. If you try to kill somebody, we're going to treat it in the same way that you did kill them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Wally, for what purpose?
Would Representative Johnson yield for a few questions?
Will the lady yield for questions?
Of course.
Lady yields.
Representative Johnson, part of the impetus for this bill, you mentioned Paul Castro's son. They were
David
leaving
Castro. Leaving the Astros
the Astros game.
Yep.
They got in a road rage incident, and the occupant of the other vehicle shoots into Paul's vehicle
Yes.
where his son was struck and killed. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. And because of that, that was a higher grade offense because the individual died. What we're seeing, though, is we're seeing a lot of this conduct where people are firing at other vehicles, and we want to hold that as accountable as though somebody has potentially died, to try to send a strong message: stop doing this.
And unfortunately, Paul and his family, we send our prayers
Yep.
and our thoughts to him. He's been a longtime advocate now for criminal justice reform
Yes.
and trying to be better at public safety. But they're not the only family. There's a lot of road rage
Correct.
incidences in Harris County that's happened. It seems like it's a big problem. We're trying to get a handle of it so that the public is safe driving, let alone in Texas, but because it's prevalent in Harris County, correct?
Absolutely. Right now, Houston is leading the nation. Texas is leading the nation in these shooting road rage incidents. And we are sending a strong message. It is not acceptable conduct to fire at another vehicle because you're not happy about the way they're driving.
And so, as I understand it, and please forgive me if I'm reading this verbatim, but part of SB 3031 closes a gap by expanding the first-degree felony offense of aggravated assault involving a motor vehicle. So that's also, you have to be in the car and has to be moving, correct?
Correct, because the law says right now, if you're in a motor vehicle and you fire at a house, that's a first degree. But if you're in a motor vehicle and you fire at another motor vehicle, that's a second degree.
Okay, and that doesn't make any sense. And
That
that's,
doesn't make sense.
you got to the point where we were trying to get.
Yep.
And so the bill removes the requirement that bodily injury caused by the shooting be serious. Is that another component of the bill?
Correct, because again, what we don't want more incidents of David Castro and Louise Wilson. We don't want the death to occur. And so what we're saying is we're trying to put a deterrent to the community to say, stop firing at other vehicles on the road that you're mad at. Because when you fire, you may hit the intended target, but you might miss that car and hit one of the other 2 or 3 cars behind them. It is just completely dangerous, and it is prevalent. It is resulting in the death of people on our roadways, and that's why we want to say, stop firing your gun at other cars on the road because you're mad about how somebody's driving.
Okay. And then again, just to clarify, it also includes cases, this bill includes cases where a person is placed in fear of imminent serious bodily injury or where the property damaged as a result of a firearm being discharged, correct?
Correct. And so the analysis there that we would expect every prosecutor to argue and follow is, if you can, imagine a bubble around that vehicle.
Right.
That you are shooting at the vehicle. We don't want you to hit the human in the vehicle. But if you hit the property, you hit the fender, you hit the tire, or it goes so close to the windshield that
Right.
you see it and you are in fear that you are going to lose your life, that's enough. If you're driving next to a vehicle and you fire up in the air to send a warning shot, that doesn't qualify for this because it doesn't reach that bubble around the vehicle.
Okay.
And it also includes that if you get out of the car, meaning you've seen all the video where you're in an intersection, somebody gets out, and effectively it's a road rage incident. We're just no longer operating the vehicle. We're right there in the intersection, we've gotten out. So that's another question that I got in committee. What if somebody's getting out of their car and walking into their house, right? I don't think that necessarily qualifies. And that's why we want language in here that prosecutors can make determinations, judges can make determinations. Is the intent of this language, which is to address all the road rage incidents you're seeing on social media all the time, to say, look, it is not acceptable for you to pull out your gun and fire at that other individual or their vehicle in that moment.
And that's a clear distinction that you have to be en route, you have to be in your vehicle, you have to get out, you're at a stop sign, you're at an intersection, and something also happens, or it is escalated, correct?
Correct. And so on page 2, line 9 through 10, the actor is inside of or directly en route to or from.
Okay. And then it also ensures, and you talked about the prosecutor's discretion here. SB 3031 ensures that prosecutors can seek appropriate penalties in cases where reckless or violent firearm use endangers the public in or around the vehicles, as you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
As they get out.
And this really targets the intent to shoot somebody in their vehicle. We make it a first degree. And the reason we have that full range of punishment, 5 to 99 or life, is it gives a ton of discretion that you can make that determination. Was this a more significant and serious incident or offender that we need to look on the heavy side of punishment? Is it a low level? And of course, we give prosecutors those tools if attempted or anything else. All I'm trying to do is right now, the ceiling of 20 years is not high enough for the severity of the crime that's being committed. We're raising the ceiling to give room for that deterrent, not only to society to say stop doing this, but to really give security to the victims to know that we are hearing them, we acknowledge the loss of their children, and we are trying to take up the mantle for what they begged for, which is stop this behavior on our roadways, send a strong message, we no longer tolerate it. And I appreciate Senator Huffman for taking this on and ensuring that David and that Louise, that their lives matter in Texas.
And we certainly want to send our thoughts and prayers again to those families, those victims that have been permanently damaged by the loss of their loved ones in these type of incidents. So I thank you, and thank you, Senator Huffman, for this bill.
Thank you, Chairman. And move passage.
Members, clarification. When Mr. Smithy moved to postpone further consideration of SJR 1, he moved to postpone it to noon on Thursday, May 22nd. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Verdell.
The chair recognizes Mr. Verdell to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this does, in case you have the bill in front of you, go to page 2, line 19 and 20. It lines out line 19 and 20. And basically what that is the way the language is written, it says, in discharging the firearm, it places any person in fear of imminent serious bodily injury. I don't agree with that, and I'm hoping that we can get this out of the language so that way the bill is just focused on if bodily injury to a person or damage to any property. I'd ask for your support and hope for adoption.
So you're taking away the threat, right? Places them in fear?
Just the imminent fear, yeah.
Members, I am opposed to this
Chair
amendment.
recognizes Ms. Johnson to speak against the amendment.
I'm opposed to the amendment. I just got it. But what it does is it takes away that threat. And so I mentioned to you what we're trying to do here is to create a bubble around the vehicle that if you fire at the vehicle that places me in imminent threat of serious bodily injury, meaning it came close enough to me that I realized they were a bad shot, but they were trying to shoot me. That is very different from firing up in the air and firing a warning shot. I'm basically pointing at you, but I'm not a good shot. What his amendment says is you got to hit the car. You got to hit a tire, you got to hit the car. And so that's why in talking to prosecutors and other folks about how do we narrow this down to a bubble around the vehicle, that's where we created that bubble. Imminent threat of serious bodily injury. I have to articulate that that shot got close enough that I realized it was a near miss. And again, that's why we want to protect it. So I am opposed to this amendment. I respect where you want to be on it. He's asking that you only punish if you're a good shot. I'm asking that you punish if you're a bad shot, but you tried to shoot the car.
Mr. Dutton? Oh. Chair recognizes Mr. Verdell to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption.
Oh, Mr. Dutton, anything?
Question for the author, Mr. Speaker.
Would the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
Gentleman
Yes,
yields.
sir.
Now, you just heard Representative Johnson's argument, and is that true what she just said?
I think what she's basically saying, if somebody shoots in that general direction towards a person, that this would be elevated to a first-degree felony.
Right.
I think that, in my opinion, for it to be elevated to a first-degree felony, that it should be that the person was struck or the property was struck, and not just the fear of being struck. Because they still have to discharge the firearm for it to be elevated to the first degree. The way my amendment would make it work is they had to hit the vehicle or they had to hit the person, versus just saying placed in
So-
the fear of imminent threat.
So you wouldn't hold them liable for shooting at the car,
They will
even
still
though
be-
they missed?
They will still be held liable to the second degree felony.
But I
not to the
mean, you
first degree.
wouldn't hold them liable for a first-degree felony
I think the second
if they
degree felony.
missed.
I still think that the second degree felony would be.
Why is that, sir?
Because I think that we have a problem right now where we are elevating almost every bill. I'm on criminal jurisprudence. Almost every bill that I see just seems to keep elevating felonies or elevating different infractions of the law up to felonies. And at some point, we have to say we already have laws in place that we have to start enforcing instead of just elevating to make people feel good like we're doing something.
But why would we elevate a crime?
Why would you elevate a crime?
Yes.
If the crime is heinous.
And you don't think shooting at a car fits in that category?
No, it's a crime, and I think it's a second degree felony.
No, but I'm talking about, we were talking about elevating. You're going backwards now. You're saying that you voted on a number of bills in crim jur about elevating crimes.
That's correct.
And yet you
Oh, I
say-
didn't vote for them. I'm saying that we had multiple bills that did that. I voted against many of those
You did-
because we should be enforcing the laws we have, not just making people feel better.
Right,
by
but the
elevating.
reason we elevate the crimes is because I think, as you said, we need to stop that bad behavior. Would you disagree?
We should stop the bad behavior using the punishments we have currently in place.
So you wouldn't even mind reducing it to a third-degree felony?
It depends what the crime is.
I mean,
Some-
this
some-
crime we're
some
talking about
punishments.
shooting at a vehicle,
If you're shooting at a vehicle, I think it should be a second degree felony.
only if you miss.
No, if it would go to a first degree felony if you hit the vehicle or if you hit the person.
And that's what her bill does, isn't it?
Well, it does, but it also gives emotional context that if you fear of imminent serious bodily injury, not if that you had a serious bodily injury.
Well, but if somebody's shooting at a car and they're just a bad shot, why would you give them any credit for being a bad shot?
I don't think you're giving them credit. They just didn't actually cause any harm to the vehicle or to the person.
Well,
They still put them in fear. I don't disagree with you there, but I don't think elevating first
I'm not
degree.
so sure it didn't cause any harm. That's what I think our bill says. It did cause harm to the person because it put them in fear of imminent bodily injury. And that's a harm, wouldn't you agree?
Well, I agree that it's a second degree felony. Yes, sir.
No,
That,
that's not what I'm asking. You keep saying the same thing, and that's not getting us anywhere. I understand it's a second-degree felony now,
yes, sir.
but she's trying to make it a first-degree felony.
And I
And,
disagree
and,
with the
and
level of punishment.
because, and, but I'm trying to understand your disagreement, sir.
Yes, sir.
And you're disagreeing, you would agree with it only if they hit the car.
Or the person. If they actually cause bodily injury or damage to the property, I would support elevating it to a first degree. Somebody being in fear of imminent threat, I don't think is enough justification to elevate that to a first degree.
So, well, I just think that, I'm not sure where you're from, sir.
I'm sorry,
But-
can you repeat that?
I'm not sure what area you represent. And maybe if you come back next session, I'll remember. But right now, I don't remember. But in Houston, for example, in
Yeah.
Harris County, this has become a major problem. In fact, I intended to file this bill and just simply forgot about it that would do exactly the same thing. Because one of the things we need to do is stop this behavior because it puts all of us in bodily injury. Because if your amendment goes on, what it means is if you miss that car and hit another car, that would be excused. There would still be a second-degree felony.
Yes, sir.
And why would you? How does that make sense?
You're asking how does it make sense?
Yeah, when you're shooting at a car, you miss, and because you missed and hit another car, you're still at a second-degree felony.
If they hit another car, they still would be first degree. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess we'll just disagree. Okay,
Yes, sir. I
thank you.
appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Appreciate it. Move for adoption.
Members, Almost said money. Mr. Verdell sends up an amendment. The amendment is not acceptable to the author. A record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Johnson voting nay. Show Ms. Isaac voting aye. Show Mr. Kane voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted now? There being 59 ayes, 78 nays, the amendment is not adopted. The chair recognizes Ms. Johnson to close on the bill.
I move passage on the bill.
Members, the question occurs on passage to third reading of Senate Bill 3031. A record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Johnson voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 103 ayes, 38 nays, Senate Bill 3031 passes to third reading. Chair lays that on second reading, Senate Bill 24. The clerk will read the bill.